Thank you for clicking on today's video. Before we begin, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the subject matter we'll be discussing. This video looks at a real-life case involving abuse and safeguarding failures. It's presented in a calm, documentary-style format, using publicly available information and without graphic detail or sensationalism. That said, I understand that topics like this can be difficult, personal, or simply not the right thing for everyone to watch or listen to at certain times. If this video isn't for you today, that's completely okay. Please take care of yourself, and I hope to see you in the next one. Before we begin, I want to say that when discussing the people involved in this case, no offense is intended. Everything shared here is based on my own research and understanding of publicly available information, and any thoughts or observations are offered respectfully and without judgment. Today's case is one that raised serious questions about trust, responsibility, and safeguarding. At its center is a situation where abuse was able to continue, not only because of one's individual's actions, but because of failures within the system's means to protect the vulnerable. To understand how this case unfolded, it's important to begin at the very start, with her family background and the circumstances surrounding her early life. So with that being said, let's begin. Beverley Allitt was born on the 4th of October 1968, which makes her a Libra. She was the second of 4 children. Very little detailed information about Beverley's parents or their relationship has ever been made public. Court reporting and later investigations did not identify any criminal history or public concerns involving them, and they were not known to social services during Beverley's early childhood. What is known is that Beverley grew up in a stable home environment, at least outwardly, with no early indications that would later predict the crimes she would commit as an adult. Her parents were Richard and Lillian Allitt and grew up in a village of Corby Glen near the town of Grantham. Her father, Richard, worked in an off-license, and her mother was a school cleaner. Beverley attended Charles Reed Secondary Modern School, having failed the test to enter Casteven and Grantham Girls' School. She often volunteered for babysitting jobs. She left school at the age of 16 and took a course in nursing at Grantham College. On 21st February 1991, her first victim, 7-month-old Liam Taylor, was admitted to the children's ward with a chest infection. Beverley went out of her way to reassure his parents that he was in capable hands and persuaded them to go home to get some rest. When they returned, Beverley told them that Liam had suffered a respiratory emergency, but that he had recovered. She volunteered for extra night duty so she could watch over the bot, and his parents chose to spend the night at the hospital as well. Liam had another respiratory crisis just before midnight, but it was felt that he'd come through it satisfactorily. Beverley was left alone with the boy, however, and his condition worsened dramatically, becoming deathly pale before red blotches appeared on his face, at which point Beverley summoned an emergency resuscitation team. Beverley's nursing colleagues were confused by the absence of alarm monitors at the time, which had failed to sound when he stopped breathing. Liam suffered cardiac arrest, and despite the best effects of the attending team, he suffered severe brain damage and remained alive only with the help of life support machines. On medical advice, his parents made the agonizing decision to remove their baby from life support, and his cause of death was recorded as heart failure. Beverley was never questioned about her role on Liam's death. Only 2 weeks after Liam's death, her next victim was Timothy Hardwick, an 11-year-old with cerebral palsy who was admitted following an epileptic fit on 5th March 1991. Beverley took over his care and, again following a period when she was alone with Timothy, she summoned the emergency resuscitation team, who found him without a pulse and turning blue. Despite their best effects, the team, which included a pediatric specialist, were unable to revive him. An autopsy later failed to provide an obvious cause of death, although his epilepsy was officially blamed. Her third victim was a 1-year-old named Kaylee Desmond. She was admitted on the 3rd of March 1991 with a chest infection from which she seemed to be recovering well. 5 days later, with Beverley in attendance, Kaylee went into cardiac arrest in the same bed where Liam Taylor had died a fortnight before. The resuscitation team were unable to revive her, and she was transferred to another hospital in Nottingham, where attending physicians discovered an odd puncture hole under her armpit during a thorough examination. They also discovered an air bubble near the puncture mark. which they attributed to an accidental injection, but no investigation was initiated. 5-month-old Paul Crampton became Beverley's next victim, placed in the ward on 20th March 1991 as a result of a non-serious bronchial infection. Just prior to his discharge, Beverley, who was again attending a patient by herself, summoned help as Paul appeared to be suffering from insulin shock, going into a near coma on 3 separate occasions. Each time, the doctors revived him, but were unable to explain the fluctuation in his insulin level. When he was taken by ambulance to another hospital in Nottingham, Beverley rode with him. He was found to have too much insulin. Paul was extremely fortunate to have survived the ministrations of the angel of death. The next day, 5-year-old Bradley Gibson, a pneumonia sufferer, went into unexpected cardiac arrest but was saved by the resuscitation team. Subsequent blood tests showed that his insulin was high, which made no sense to the attending physicians. Attendance by Beverley resulted in another heart attack later that night, and he was transported to Nottingham, where he recovered, despite this alarming increase in the incidence of unexplained health events. All in the presence of Beverley, no suspicions were aroused around this time, and she continued her spree of violence unchecked. On 22nd March 1991, 2-year-old victim Yik Hung Chon turned blue and appeared in considerable distress when Beverley raised the alarm, but he responded well to oxygen. Another attack resulted in his transferal to the larger hospital in Nottingham, where he recovered. His symptoms were attributed to a fractured skull, the result of a fall. Beverley next turned her attention to twins Katie and Becky Phillips, just 2 months old, who were kept in for observation as a result of their premature delivery. A bout of gastroenteritis brought Becky into the ward on 1st April 1991, when Beverley took over her care. 2 days later, Beverley raised the alarm, claiming that Becky appeared hypoglycemic and cold to the touch, but no ailment was found. Baby Becky was sent home with her mother. During the night, she went into convulsions and cried out in apparent pain, but when summoned, a doctor suggested she had colic. The parents kept her in their bed for observation, and she died during the night. Despite an autopsy, pathologists could find no clear cause of death. Becky's surviving twin, Katie, was admitted to Grantham as a precaution, and unfortunately, Beverley was again in attendance. It wasn't long before she was again summoning a resuscitation team to revive baby Kaidi, who had stopped breathing. Effects to revive Kaidi was successful, but 2 days later she suffered a similar attack, which resulted in the collapse of her lungs. Following another revival effect, she was transferred to Nottingham, where it was found that 5 of her ribs were broken, in addition to having suffered serious brain damage as a result of her oxygen deprivation. In a supreme twist of irony, Katie's mother was so grateful to Beverley for saving her baby's life that she asked her to be Katie's godmother. Beverley accepted willingly, despite having inflicted partial paralysis, cerebral palsy, and sight and hearing damage on the infant. 4 more victims followed, but the high incidence of unexplained attacks in otherwise healthy patients and Beverley's attendance during these attacks finally caused suspicions to be raised at the hospital. Beverley's violent spree was brought to an end with the death of a 15-month-old Claire Peck on 12th April 1991, an asthmatic who required a breathing tube. While in Beverley's care for only a few minutes, the infant suffered a heart attack. The resuscitation team revived her successfully, but, when again alone in Beverley's presence, baby Claire suffered a second attack, from which she could not be revived. Although an autopsy indicated that Claire had died from natural causes, an inquiry was initiated by a consultant at the hospital, Dr. Nelson Porter, who was alarmed by the high number of cardiac arrests over the previous 2 months in the children's ward. An airborne virus was initially suspected, but nothing was found. A test that revealed a high level of potassium on baby Claire's blood resulted in the police being called 18 days later. Her exhumation discovered traces of lignocaine in her system, a drug used during cardiac arrest but never given to a baby. The police superintendent assigned to the investigation, Stuart Clifton, suspected foul play, and he examined the other suspicious cases that had occurred in the previous 2 months, finding an inordinately high dose of insulin in most. Further evidence revealed that Beverley had reported the key missing to the insulin refrigerator. All records were checked, parents of the victims were interviewed, and a security camera was installed. Suspicions were raised when record checks revealed missing daily nursing logs, which corresponded to the time period when Paul Crampton had been in the ward. When 25 separate suspicious episodes with 13 victims were identified, 4 of whom were dead, the only common factor was the presence of Beverley Allitt at every episode. By the 26th of July, 1991, police felt that they had sufficient evidence to charge Beverley with murder, but it wasn't until November 1990 that she was formally charged. Beverley showed calm and restraint under interrogation, denying any part in the attacks, insisting she had merely been caring for the victims. A search of her home revealed parts of the missing nursing log. Further extensive background checks by the police indicated a pattern of behavior that pointed to a very serious personality disorder, and Beverley exhibited symptoms of both Munchausen's syndrome and Munchausen's syndrome by proxy, which are both characterized by getting attention through illness. With Munchausen's syndrome, physical or psychological symptoms are either self-induced or feigned in oneself to gain attention, while Munchausen's by proxy involves inflicting injury on others to gain attention for oneself. It is fairly unusual for an individual to present with both conditions. Beverley's behavior in adolescence appeared to be typical of Munchausen's syndrome, and when this behavior failed to elicit the desired reaction in others, she began to harm her young patients in order to satisfy her desire to be noticed. Despite visits and assessments by a number of healthcare professionals while in prison, Beverley refused to confess what she had done. After a series of hearings, Beverley was charged with 4 counts of murder, 11 counts of attempted murder, and 11 counts of causing grievous bodily harm. As she awaited her trial, she rapidly lost weight and developed anorexia nervosa, a further indication of her psychological problems. After numerous delays due to her illnesses, she went to trial at Nottingham Crown Court on 15th February 1993, where prosecutors demonstrated to the jury how she had been present at each suspicious episode and the last of episodes when she was taken off the ward. Evidence about high readings of insulin and potassium in each of the victims, as well as drug injection and puncture marks, were also linked to Beverley. She was further accused of cutting off her victims' oxygen, either by smothering or by tampering with machines. Her unusual behavior in childhood was brought to light, and the pediatrics expert Professor Roy Meadow explained Munchausen's by proxy syndrome to the jury, pointing out how Beverley demonstrated symptoms of both, as well as introducing evidence of her typical post-arrest behavior and high incidence of illness, which has delayed the start of her trial. It was Professor Meadows' opinion that Beverley Allitt would never be cured, and making her a clear danger to anyone with whom she might come in contact. The trial lasted 2 months, and on 23rd May 1993, Beverley was convicted and given 13 sentences for murder and attempted murder. This was the harshest sentence ever delivered to a female. It was commensurate with the horrific suffering of the victims, their families, and the ignominy she had brought upon nursing as a profession. The impact Beverley's case had on Grantham and Kesteven was so severe that the maternity unit was closed down altogether. Beverley was incarcerated at Rampton Secure Hospital in Nottingham, a high-security facility housing mainly individuals detained under the Mental Health Act. As an inmate at Rampton, she began her attention-seeking behavior again, ingesting ground glass and pouring boiling water on her hand. She is subsequently admitted to 3 of the murders of which she was charged, as well as 6 of the assaults. The appalling nature of her crimes has placed her on the Home Office list of criminals who will never be eligible for parole. There have been accusations from the father of Beverley's first victim that Rampton is more like a Butlin's holiday camp than a prison. In 2001, there were reports that she was to marry fellow inmate Mark Heggie, although she is currently still single. Most recently, she was the subject of a Mirror newspaper inquiry in May 2005, when it was revealed that she received over £40,000 in state benefits since her incarceration in 1993. In August 2006, Beverley applied for a review of her sentence, which led the probation service to contact victims' families about the process. Beverley remains in Rampton to this day. The case of Beverley Allitt exposed serious failures in safeguarding and oversight within a system that was meant to protect the most vulnerable. More than anything, it remains a reminder of how important accountability, vigilance, and proper safeguarding procedures are in positions of trust. This case is not remembered to sensationalize the individual responsible, but to acknowledge the harm caused, the lives affected, and the lessons that should never be forgotten. If there are any cases you believe deserve careful, documentary style coverage, you're welcome to leave a suggestion in the comments. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay safe out there.